They say a child's silence is peaceful. Whoever said that never raised a child who couldn't speak. Silence isn't peace, it's 1,000 unanswered questions echoing in every moment of quiet. The morning my daughter left for Hawaii, I didn't know it would change everything. I was pouring oatmeal into a ceramic bowl, the same one my grandson, Eli, always insisted on because it had a chip that looked like a dinosaur bite. He wasn't at the table. He hadn't spoken a word in 3 years, not since he was 2. No babbling, no humming, not even a whisper in his sleep. The doctors called it selective mutism. I called it the silence of something deeper, something unsaid. My daughter, Rachel, slammed the front door behind her, sunglasses on, beach bag slung over her shoulder, flip-flops already clapping. "Don't forget Eli's meds," she shouted without looking at me. "We'll be back in 10 days. She was gone before I could ask her why she was really going. 10 days in Maui with her husband and in-laws. But what mother leaves her mute child behind with a 70-year-old woman whose arthritis flared every time the rain came? I stood in the quiet, my hand trembling slightly around the coffee mug. Eli was still upstairs, quiet as always. That boy, he was all I had left that made any sense in this broken life. I walked up to his room. "Good morning, sweetheart," I whispered, gently opening his door. He sat on the carpet with a small yellow truck in one hand and a photo in the other. The photo was old, wrinkled at the edges, a picture of his father. My son-in-law, Andrew. Gone 3 years now. Stroke. Too young, too sudden. Eli didn't look up. "Would you like some breakfast?" He turned his truck over, once, twice, then placed it carefully beside the photo. No response. Of course not. The first 2 days were ordinary, in the most heartbreaking way. Eli never cried, never asked for anything. He followed me silently from room to room, sometimes sitting by the window, watching the neighbor's dog bark at squirrels, or flipping through the same 3 picture books he'd had since he was a toddler. Every night, I tucked him into bed with the same soft words, "Grandma loves you. Sleep well, my heart." And he'd nod, just a nod, before turning to face the wall. On the 3rd day, I found him in the hallway with his small hands pressed to the wall, listening. "What is it, baby?" I asked. He looked at me, his dark eyes wide, then pointed up toward the attic. I hadn't been up there in years. The attic door creaked open like a secret trying not to be found. Dust floated in thick clouds as I pulled the string light. The room was the same as it had always been: boxes, suitcases, an old chest from my husband's Navy days. But in the far corner, something new. A pile of children's books and one small stuffed bear I didn't recognize. Had Rachel brought this up here? But why? I picked up the bear. Its eye was torn, stuffing poking out from the seam at the neck. It smelled faintly of lavender. "Where did this come from?" I murmured. A sudden noise: thump. I turned fast. Eli stood in the doorway. His lips moved. My heart skipped, but no sound. He walked slowly to the bear, took it from my hands, and cradled it against his chest. Then he turned and went back down the ladder without a word. That night, I couldn't sleep. By the 5th day, Eli stopped eating. Not refused, just forgot. Like food wasn't even part of his world anymore. I called Rachel. Straight to voicemail. Then I got a photo. A beach, palm trees, a smiling group of tanned people holding coconuts. Rachel's caption: "Living my best life." I wanted to scream. Instead, I showed Eli the picture. I don't know why I did it, maybe some twisted hope he'd show something. He stared, then tapped once gently on the face of Rachel. I swallowed hard. "Do you miss her?" He shook his head. Something clenched in my chest. Grief? Guilt? Relief? Maybe all 3. Day 6 was when everything cracked. It started with the rain. Heavy, sheets of it pounding the house, the kind that drowns out your thoughts. Eli sat by the fireplace, curled up with the bear. I was knitting, or pretending to. Every loop I missed just made my frustration worse. He stood up suddenly, walked to the kitchen. I followed. He stopped in front of the fridge. Then, without turning, he said it. 7 words. The first words I'd heard him speak since he was 2 years old. "She lied. He didn't die. He left." My knees buckled. I grabbed the counter. "What did you say?" I choked. He looked over his shoulder. His voice was soft, clear, calm. "She lied. He didn't die. He left." The storm outside wasn't nearly as loud as the one inside me. I crouched down. "Eli, sweetheart, who lied?" He looked at me like it was obvious. "Mommy." I couldn't breathe. "Your daddy didn't die?" He shook his head. "She said he did, but he didn't." He came to say goodbye. I saw. Tears filled my eyes. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers, opened my email. I searched Andrew's name. Obituary. Death notice. The hospital's confirmation. It was all there. Or was it? I opened the file Rachel had sent me the week after the funeral. A scan of a death certificate. But suddenly, things looked wrong. The signature on the doctor's line was scribbled, not even a name. The hospital's logo was blurry, almost like it had been copied and pasted. I zoomed in. My blood turned cold. It was a fake. I sat at the kitchen table, clutching the phone like it could anchor me back to some version of reality. Rachel had forged a death certificate. It wasn't just illegal, it was unthinkable. A betrayal so deep it shook everything I believed about her. About our family. But why? I looked over at Eli, who was now drawing quietly at the table with his crayons. He'd gone back to silence, as if those 7 words had used up all his courage. His small hand moved steadily across the paper, red and black lines shaping something. I leaned in. It was a house. A big one. 2 windows. A car in front. And off to the side a man. He'd drawn a tall man with black shoes and a brown coat, waving. "Who's that?" I asked gently. Eli tapped the figure. "Daddy," he whispered. This time, I didn't flinch. Where was this? He looked up. Not here. I understood. Somewhere else. Not in our home. Not in our town. Did he come to you? He nodded. After the loud night. My breath caught. The night Andrew supposedly died had been stormy, just like now. Rachel said he collapsed in the bathroom and died before the ambulance arrived. But something in me had always felt wrong. Off. Like the timeline didn't make sense. "Eli," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Can you show me where the house is?" He nodded again. That night, I sat up in bed with my laptop glowing on the covers. I pulled up Andrew's old social media accounts. All of them were locked. Dormant. Nothing new since that last blurry photo of him and Rachel at a pumpkin patch. I went deeper. Old emails. His LinkedIn. Nothing. Until I found an archived comment on a hiking forum under the name Coastal Run 34. The avatar was Andrew's old hiking boots. I recognized them. The comment was from 7 months ago. Looking for trails near Twin Pines, Oregon recommendations? I felt the ground shift under me. Twin Pines was a tiny coastal town 3 states away. Population barely 300. The kind of place no one would ever look for someone hiding. And I knew Rachel had never mentioned it. The next morning, I packed a bag. Enough clothes for a few days. I printed the fake death certificate and highlighted the inconsistencies. I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe it was the fury. Maybe the ache of a decade of motherhood I'd thought was whole and honest. "Eli," I said quietly. He blinked slowly, then nodded. I left Rachel a voicemail. "If you value anything left in this family, call me back before I get to Oregon." She didn't call. The drive to Twin Pines took 14 hours. I didn't stop except for gas and 1 bathroom break. Eli slept most of the time, the bear in his lap, arms curled around it like a shield. When we entered the town, the air smelled like pine needles and salt. The ocean was only a few miles down the hill, and fog blanketed everything like a quiet secret. We checked into the only motel available. It had peeling green paint and a flickering neon sign that said vacancy. The clerk asked no questions. Once we were in the room, I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands shaking. "Do you remember anything else?" I asked Eli. He nodded. "A dog. White. Big. Barked a lot." I paused. That could be anything, but it was something. "Anything else?" He pulled out the crayon drawing again. This time he added a small circle near the man's feet. "A rock?" I asked. He shook his head, then wrote something under it, the first word I'd seen him write. "Lola." A dog's name. I asked around the next day. Started at the diner. Showed Andrew's old photo to the waitress, who frowned thoughtfully. "He looks familiar. I think I've seen him with one of the local painters. Guy named Joel. Owns a little gallery on Cedar Lane. Big white dog named Lola. Friendly but barks at everything." My heart pounded. "Where's the gallery?" She pointed out the window. "Down 2 blocks, past the hardware store. Red door. Can't miss it." Eli squeezed my hand the whole walk there. I could feel him trembling, but his grip never loosened. We reached the red door. It was closed. A chime sounded when I opened it. Inside were landscapes, seascapes, and paintings of broken-down barns glowing in sunset light. Then I saw him. He was facing away, bent over a canvas, painting with his left hand something he always used to do when focused. That unmistakable crooked posture. The long scar on his forearm. Andrew. Alive. I nearly collapsed. Andrew. He froze. Turned slowly. The moment his eyes met mine, the blood drained from his face. Judy? Eli stood behind me. Andrew looked down. He didn't blink. And then his voice cracked. Eli. Oh my God. He dropped the brush. And my grandson ran to him, silent tears streaming down his face, wrapping his small arms around the man he hadn't seen in 3 years. Andrew knelt, holding him tightly. You're here. You're really here. I stood there, shaking, until Andrew looked up. I didn't want to leave him, he said, his voice rough. I swear to God, I didn't want to. Then why? I whispered. We sat in the back of the gallery. The white dog, Lola, lay curled near the window, occasionally thumping her tail against the wood floor. Eli leaned into Andrew's side like he was trying to memorize his warmth. Andrew looked older, tired, but not ashamed. Rachel gave me a choice, he said. 3 years ago, we were fighting constantly. After I lost my job, she said I was dead weight. I told her I'd find work, that I just needed time, but she was cold. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. He paused. Then one night, she came home with this look on her face, calm, like she'd made peace with something. She said, You're going to disappear. You're going to walk away, or I'll make sure you never see Eli again. I'll tell the world you're dead. I stared, horrified. She said she'd create paperwork, that I wasn't needed anymore, that her new life didn't have room for failures. She faked your death. He nodded. I was scared. For Eli. I didn't know what she was capable of. So I left. Came here. Tried to start over. I never stopped thinking about him. I wrote letters. I sent toys through a friend. But she must have thrown them away. He swallowed hard. I thought I was doing what was best. But I was a coward. I couldn't speak for a long time. When I finally did, it was only to say, You need to come back. You need to fix this. I don't know if I can. Eli spoke because of you. That silence broke because you were the truth he held on to. That means something. Andrew looked down at his son, then slowly nodded. The next morning, I got a call. Rachel. I stepped out of the gallery and answered. You went to Oregon, didn't you? Her voice was shaking. You lied to your son. You forged a death certificate. You destroyed a man. She said nothing. I found him. I continued. He's alive. And Eli knew. He remembered. You don't understand. No, I cut in. You don't. That boy trusted you. You used that silence as cover. But you didn't break him. You just made him quieter. You're going to ruin everything, she hissed. No, I said calmly. I'm going to give Eli his voice back. Then I hung up. We stayed in Twin Pines for 3 days. Eli laughed for the first time on the second day, a small, high-pitched giggle as Lola licked his cheek. Andrew didn't let him go. And I didn't ask for forgiveness. I wasn't the one who had to. On the 3rd day in Twin Pines, I stood by the motel window, watching Eli sleep curled against Andrew's side. They had fallen asleep together on the small pull-out couch in the corner of the room. The soft sound of the waves crashing just a few blocks away mixed with the low whine of the wind outside. My hands trembled as I held a hot mug of tea. What now? What would we do with the truth? It was one thing to find Andrew. It was another to bring him back. I'll go with you, Andrew said suddenly, voice hoarse from sleep. I turned. He sat up slowly, rubbing his hands through his hair. I've been running from that moment for 3 years. But the look on Eli's face when he saw me, he trailed off. I lost everything, Judy. But he never stopped waiting for me. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. My silence gave him permission to keep speaking. I kept telling myself I left to protect him. But I think part of me stayed away because I was ashamed. Because I let her do it. I let her erase me. You didn't let her, I finally said. You survived her. Andrew let out a breath. We need a plan. We drove into the town square later that day and found a notary public and a small legal office tucked between a bakery and a thrift shop. A kind man named Mitchell agreed to help us file a case to prove Andrew was alive, that the death certificate was a forgery, and that Rachel had committed fraud. It won't be easy, Mitchell said, glancing over the documents I brought. But it's possible, especially with the child involved. The court doesn't take kindly to fabricated deaths. Andrew signed an affidavit. I submitted copies of the email Rachel sent with the fake documents. Eli, too young to testify, didn't need to say anything. But that night, he crawled into my lap as I sat in bed, holding my knitting needles midair and whispered something I hadn't heard since he was 2. I want him home. Tears burned in my throat. We'll bring him home. 3 days later, we drove back to Oregon's state line with Mitchell's guidance. Andrew now had temporary custody rights restored and a court hearing scheduled in our county within the week. I texted Rachel again. We're coming home. With him. With the truth. Be ready. She didn't reply. It wasn't until we crossed into California that I noticed something different in Eli. He hummed. Soft at first. Barely there. But it was a melody, some children's lullaby from the music box I used to wind up beside his crib. I didn't interrupt him. I just kept driving as tears filled my eyes. He was finding his voice again, and I knew it had never been truly lost, just buried under grief, betrayal, and confusion. We arrived back home 2 days before the hearing. Rachel was waiting on the front porch, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes. When Andrew stepped out of the car, she went pale. You brought him here, she hissed. He's my son, Andrew said, his voice calm but fierce. You can't just barge into our lives like nothing happened. You lied to a child, I snapped. You told him his father was dead. Rachel's expression didn't change. I did what I had to. No, Andrew said. You did what was easy. There's a difference. Eli peeked out from behind Andrew's leg. Rachel knelt down, trying to coax him forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sweetheart, come here. Mommy missed you so much. But Eli didn't move. He only said, softly, you said he died. Rachel froze. He pointed to Andrew, but he didn't. His little voice cut sharper than any courtroom statement. And Rachel for once had nothing to say. The hearing came quickly. Rachel came with a lawyer. Andrew came with Mitchell. I sat in the front row, Eli by my side, holding my hand tightly. Andrew presented everything. The forged certificate, the fake hospital documentation, the email. Rachel's attorney tried to discredit him, called it an act of desperation, a narrative with no proof. But the judge, a tall woman with gray hair and a tired gaze, interrupted after 15 minutes. Ms. Carson, is it true that your ex-husband is alive? Rachel hesitated. Yes. And you told your son and family that he had died? Her voice cracked. Yes. And you created, or knowingly submitted, a false death certificate? Silence. Rachel's lawyer touched her arm. Yes, she said. The courtroom was utterly still. Eli leaned into me. The judge's ruling was swift. Andrew's parental rights were restored. Rachel's custody was temporarily suspended pending a psychological evaluation. A formal investigation into fraud was ordered, and Eli was officially placed in joint custody with Andrew and me as co-guardians. Rachel didn't look at me as we left the courthouse, but I looked at her, not with hatred, with pity, because she had taken the most precious thing in the world, a child's trust, and crushed it. And that kind of loss doesn't heal easily. The house felt different with Andrew back. He fixed the creaky step on the porch that had been broken for 2 years. He made Eli grilled cheese sandwiches just the way he used to, with the crust cut off and a smiley face drawn in ketchup. At night, he read him stories in bed, stories that Eli had memorized without ever hearing aloud. And Eli? He spoke now. Not a lot. Not loud. But words came back to him, slow and careful like leaves growing back after a long winter. Daddy, look. Grandma, I love you. I remember this. And one night, when we were all sitting by the fireplace, the same bear in his lap, he looked at both of us and whispered, I'm not scared anymore. There's a kind of quiet that comes after the storm, not just silence, but peace. And that's what our home felt like in the weeks after the hearing. Not perfect, but peaceful. Eli began to speak in full sentences, sometimes halting, sometimes unsure, but each word was a small victory. Each glance he gave Andrew, each question he asked me, they were seeds of trust being planted again. Andrew moved into the spare room. He said he wanted to earn his place back, not just in the house, but in Eli's world. I didn't argue. He cooked breakfast every morning, took Eli to therapy, walked him home from school hand in hand, rain or shine. The first time Eli called him Daddy again, I saw Andrew cry. He didn't try to hide it. Rachel, meanwhile, was quiet. The court had ordered her to attend counseling, supervised visitation once a week, under my presence or Andrew's. The first session, she showed up in dark glasses and refused to speak to either of us. Eli didn't go to her. He sat close to me, only glancing in her direction once, as if she were a stranger passing through a place she no longer belonged to. The second visit, she tried harder. She brought him a toy, a little plane. Eli took it, examined it for a moment, then quietly placed it back in the bag. "No thank you," he said. That was all. But I saw how it shook her. I watched Rachel closely during those visits. There were moments I didn't recognize her. Her hands trembled sometimes when she reached for her coffee. Her nails were bitten down. The sharpness in her voice had dulled. One day, after the session, she asked if she could speak to me alone. We sat on the front porch, the late spring breeze soft against our skin. "I didn't think he'd remember," she said, staring at the trees. "He was too. Just a baby." I said nothing. "I was angry," she continued. Andrew had lost his job. He was spiraling. I felt like I was carrying everything. I thought if I could just cut him out, start over. "You don't have to justify it," I interrupted. "You lied to your son. You forged documents. You left your child in silence." Rachel flinched. "I know," she said softly. "I hate myself every day." I turned toward her. "Then show him that. Not guilt. Not gifts. Show him you're sorry. Let him rebuild at his pace, not yours." She didn't reply, but she nodded. And for the first time in a long time, I believed she meant it. Eli began to ask questions about the past. Did Mommy love Daddy before? Why did she say he died? Did I do something bad? Those were the hardest. We answered carefully, gently, but always honestly. "No, sweetheart. None of this was your fault. She loved him once. People change. Sometimes grown-ups make bad decisions. It doesn't mean you're not loved." Andrew handled those conversations with surprising grace. He never painted Rachel as a villain. Never used words like evil or crazy. He just said the truth and let Eli ask what he needed to. That was something I deeply respected. Because sometimes, children don't need explanations. They need safety. And slowly, Eli was finding it. It was a Thursday afternoon when I found a small envelope tucked into my mailbox. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a letter handwritten. No signature. "Mom, I don't expect forgiveness. But I need you to know I thought I was doing what was right. I thought if I made it clean, if I erased him from our story, I could rewrite something safer." But Eli was never broken. He just stopped feeling safe. I did that. I see that now. I'm going to finish my counseling. I'm not giving up on him. Or on you. Or even on me. I'm so sorry. For everything. I folded the letter slowly. My hands didn't tremble this time. I placed it in the drawer next to Eli's school drawings. Not because I was ready to forget, but because healing doesn't mean erasing pain. It means choosing what we hold on to. Summer came, and with it came light, warm evenings, ice cream runs, days at the lake. Eli splashed in the water, screamed with laughter as Andrew spun him around. He sang in the car sometimes. Off-key, adorable, loud. Once, he climbed into my lap and whispered, "I feel happy inside." And I thought that was the moment I'd been waiting for. Not the words. Not the truth. Not even the justice. That. Happiness. In a child who once said nothing at all. But healing isn't always linear. It was mid-July when Eli woke up crying. Not screaming, crying. He ran to Andrew's room and buried himself in his father's chest, sobbing uncontrollably. "I dreamed Mommy was gone," he said. "Forever." Andrew held him for over an hour. Neither of them moved. I sat in the hallway, tears in my eyes, listening to the soft repetition of Andrew's voice. "She's not gone. You're safe. We're here. I've got you." It reminded me that even broken people can still become safe places. A week later, Rachel came over for a supervised visit. Eli looked at her for a long time before walking over and placing a small drawing in her lap. It was a family. 4 stick figures. 1 taller woman. 1 man. 1 boy. 1 older lady in a rocking chair. "Is that us?" Rachel asked. Eli nodded. "You kept me in the picture," she whispered. He looked at her, serious and steady. "You're still my mom. But you have to be better." That was the first time I saw Rachel cry without hiding it. And that I thought was the first step toward becoming worthy again. The summer passed like that. Moments of light. Moments of reckoning. But always moving forward. And then, one quiet Sunday morning, Eli stood in the kitchen beside me as I flipped pancakes. He was humming again. He liked to hum now as if his voice had been waiting behind a locked door, and once it opened, music had come pouring out. He tugged at my apron. "Grandma." "Yes, honey. I think I want to write a book one day." I smiled. "What kind of book?" "One where the daddy comes back, and the kid talks, and the mommy says sorry, and the grandma saves the day." I laughed. Sounds like a pretty good story. He grinned, revealing that crooked tooth that never quite grew straight. It's a happy one. August rolled in on soft winds and golden skies. The neighborhood kids were outside riding their bikes, shouting about summer ending and school supplies. Eli was among them, not shouting, not wild, but smiling. Balanced. Present. That was the miracle. Not that he spoke again. Not that the courts believed us. But that a boy who once lived in silence had found belonging in the noise of the world. Every day now, his voice became stronger. Still gentle. Still soft-spoken. But there. Always there. And sometimes, when no one was looking, I'd step into my bedroom and cry. Quietly. The kind of cry that comes when you realize you've survived something enormous. Not everyone does. Rachel's counselor called one afternoon. She'd completed her sessions. Made significant emotional progress, they said. She'd been recommended for gradual reintroduction into Eli's life, unsupervised time, if all went well. I told Andrew that night. We sat on the porch, sipping iced tea, watching fireflies dance through the dark. I don't know if I trust her yet, he said. You don't have to, I replied. You just have to trust Eli. He nodded. He's the strongest person I know. And he meant it. Rachel asked for a full Saturday with him. Just the two of them. No Andrew. No me. Just mother and son. Eli was quiet when I asked what he thought. She's learning, he said. I can give her a chance. So we packed his little backpack with snacks, his favorite drawing pad, and the bear. Always the bear. I stood at the door as Rachel picked him up. She looked different now, not just tired, but softer. Her voice was gentler. Her movements more careful, like she was afraid of dropping something fragile. Thank you, she said to me, for not turning him against me. I didn't have to, I replied. He remembered the truth, all on his own. She didn't argue. She just nodded and took his hand. They came back 6 hours later. Eli burst into the house, waving a paper airplane. She taught me how to fold it, he yelled. And we saw turtles at the pond. Rachel followed behind, holding her shoes in one hand, her eyes red but smiling. He talked the whole time, she said. He asked questions, told stories. You listened? I asked. She nodded. Every word. That evening, Rachel stayed for dinner. Andrew didn't object. The four of us sat at the table like old times, though nothing about it was the same. The air was tense, awkward at first, but it slowly warmed. Rachel cleared her throat halfway through the meal. I want to say something, she said. Andrew set down his fork. Eli looked up from his mashed potatoes. I lied, Rachel said. I lied because I was scared. Because I didn't believe in myself. Or him. Or us. She looked at Eli. And I hurt you. In a way I can't ever take back. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right. Silence. Then Eli reached across the table and took her hand. I know, he said. And somehow that was enough. Fall came like a quiet apology. The leaves turned red and gold. Eli started second grade. His teacher sent me a note after the first week. He's quiet, but kind. Thoughtful. Reads to the other kids at recess. And when he speaks, everyone listens. I pinned it to the fridge next to his drawings. The one of the family with 4 stick figures had become more detailed, now hands were held. Smiles were bigger. In one, he added a sun in the corner with long bright rays. At the center of the page, under our feet, he'd written, Home. Andrew decided to stay in town permanently. He sold the gallery in Oregon and opened a small studio here, just a few blocks from the school. He let Eli name it. Second Chances. I couldn't think of a better name. As for Rachel, she didn't move back in. She got her own place across town. She came to every school recital, every parent meeting, every therapy session, and every birthday dinner, where she brought the cake but never took credit. She learned how to love without ownership. She learned how to be forgiven slowly, humbly. Not everyone gets that chance. But when you're truly willing to change, the people you love may meet you where you are. And Eli, in his own quiet way, did. There was a day in November, just before Thanksgiving, when Eli asked me something that stopped me cold. We were raking leaves together in the front yard. His cheeks were flushed from the cold, his arms full of crunchy red leaves. He dropped them in the pile and turned to me. Grandma. Yes, honey. If I hadn't spoken that day, would you have still found Daddy? I paused, rake in hand, heart beating a little faster. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe not. He nodded, thoughtful. Then I'm glad I did. He looked up at the sky, as if the words themselves had waited years to be said. I was scared for a long time. But that day something told me you were ready to hear it. I dropped the rake, knelt down in front of him, took his face in both hands. You saved us, Eli, not the other way around. He smiled and whispered, I love you. We celebrated Thanksgiving with a full table that year. Andrew carved the turkey. Rachel brought the pie. Eli made little place cards with doodles on them. Mine had a heart with knitting needles. Andrew's had a paintbrush. Rachel's had a sunshine. And Eli's? A bear. Always the bear. Later that night, as I tucked him into bed, he held my hand a little longer than usual. Grandma. Yes, sweetheart. I don't think I'll be silent again. Why not? I asked softly. He smiled. Because now everyone listens.